Hey firsties, it's Miss Bale, and I know you guys are probably thinking, we're doing writing, where's Miss Palmer? But you get me this week for writing because Miss Palmer and I decided to switch things up because she had a really cool book that she's going to read to you guys. If you've already done your reading for this week, you've already gotten to listen to it, so you probably, I'm sure, enjoyed it. And if you haven't, I know you guys will really like the book that she's going to read to you. So I'm going to do writing with you all. And what we're going to do this week is we're going to do the same thing that we did last week with our informational writing. So first, I'm going to kind of review what Miss Palmer talked to you guys about last week with informational writing. And then we're going to go over something new that you're going to add to your informational writing this week. And then we'll talk about what you're actually going to write about. Because last week, I know you guys got to choose what you wrote about. But this week, I'm going to tell you what you're going to write about. All right? So we're going to read a book together, give you some good information about the topic, and then you'll get a chance to tell your teacher what you know, okay? All right, let's get started. All right, so I know last week Ms. Palmer talked to you guys about informational writing and kind of what to expect and what it is. So just to remind ourselves, informational writing is what you know about something. So the reason that I'm showing this superhero girl and the little hand with the 5 numbers around the fingers is because it's always kind of a good rule of thumb. Rule of thumb means like something to remember. So it's always good to remember, or a rule of thumb, that if you know 5 things about a topic, then that's usually something that would be good for you to write about. If you don't know that many things, then you might want to choose a different topic, okay? And we also want to make sure that we're not telling a story. This is not a personal narrative. Yes, it's true, but it's not something that happened in a story that you're telling. It's just giving information. So you want to make sure that you stay focused on the topic, okay? All right, so let's talk about what you guys are going to add to your informational writing for this week. All right, so let's talk about what you guys are going to do this week, because you're actually going to add on to what you did last week. And let me tell you, you guys did awesome on your informational writing. You all told us so many good facts about the topics that you chose, and we loved getting to see all of the different topics that you did choose. So that was really fun to get to look at. But this week, what you guys are going to do is you're going to add on and add a text feature. So we're just going to look at 3 text features that we've already talked about this year. So these should be pretty familiar, okay? And remember, a text feature is something that you see in a nonfiction or an informational book, and it just helps you understand what you're reading even better. So let's talk a little bit more about text features and the 3 text features that we're going to look at today that you're going to choose one of them to add to your writing this week. All right, so this is our first text feature that you can choose from. And remember, you're going to choose one of these 3 to add to your writing when you go to do this in just a little bit. So this one, remember, is a caption, which is just going to explain your photograph or your picture a little bit better. So it's the words or the text that are close by to that picture or photograph, and it just explains what's going on in the picture a little bit better. All right, so let's look at another one. All right, so this next text feature, remember, is called bold print. Or sometimes you can call it bold text. It's the same thing. But remember, that's where you take a word that is really important and you make it look thicker and darker than the rest of the words on the page. And then that way it stands out to the reader, and then the reader knows that that word is really important and they need to make sure that they pay attention to it. So this might be a text feature that you choose to use in your writing. So let's look at one more. Okay, and our last text feature that we're going to remind ourselves about is the glossary. And this is one of my favorite text features because I know a lot of times when I read nonfiction books, I might get to a word that actually might be in bold print and I know is important, but I don't know what the word means. And so usually when you find a bold print word, then you know you can flip to the back of the book and it'll be in the glossary, and the glossary will tell you what that word means. So it's a really, really important text feature and definitely helps you understand what you're reading better. So think about which one you would like to choose, and then we'll talk about what that's going to look like. All right, guys, so let's take a look at what Miss Palmer did last week. So I'm not going to read it to you because I know that Miss Palmer already read what she wrote to you all last week. But I do want to point out that I added a text feature. Can you all tell what text feature I added? I added a caption. That's right. So below her picture, I wanted to explain a little bit more about what was going on in the picture that Miss Palmer drew. So I decided to write, this polar bear has white fur that is hollow or empty on the inside. Polar bears live in the Arctic where it's very cold. So I decided to write a little bit more about what was going on in the picture, but also give more information about polar bears. So you may decide to do a caption like I did. You may decide to do bold print, or you may decide to do a quick little glossary at the end of your writing. But you get to choose what you're going to add on this week. So let's take a look at what me and your other teachers decided for you all to write about for your informational piece this week. So let's take a look. So what we're going to write about today is all about the sun and the moon. And so that's something that if we had been in school for the rest of the year, if we had continued to meet, we would have definitely talked about. But we wanted to give you guys a chance to learn a little bit more about the sun and the moon and be able to do it kind of at the same time that you all are doing your informational writing. So we're going to read a story called The Sun and the Moon, and it's going to give you a lot of really good information about the sun and the moon. But if you need more information, then you can always go to BrainPop. And BrainPop actually has a video about the sun and a video about the moon. So you could watch one of those, you could watch both of them, and you could get even more information for your writing if you wanted to do that. You don't have to, but you can if you want to. And so what I would do is I would pause the video, go grab a piece of paper and a pencil, or maybe your favorite color marker, and come back and meet me back here in front of your computer or your phone or your iPad or whatever you've got, your tablet, and then we'll read our story together. And the reason I want you to grab a piece of paper and a pencil is because I want you to be able to jot down some quick notes. So like write down important words that I say, or write a quick picture of something that I read about, and then that way you can remember the facts that you learned when you go to actually write your informational writing. All right, so make sure you do that, pause the video, and then we'll come back and we'll read the book. All right, so let's get started with our book, The Sun and the Moon. So our book is written by Carolyn Tsunami de Cristofano. Man, that is a last name. And it's illustrated by Taya Morley. So we're going to read some more about the sun and the moon. And don't forget, if you haven't yet, I would go grab a piece of paper or something where you can jot down some pictures or notes of things that you learn about while you're listening to the story, because then you're going to write and tell us some information about the sun and the moon, okay? All right, so let's read some more about the sun and the moon. So the sun and the moon. Just looking up at the sun. What's that round yellow object shining in the sky? The sun, of course. And what's the other bright object up there? Did you say the moon? Then you were right. But sometimes the moon is harder to recognize. The sun is out in the day. It always has a circle shape. But the moon is different. Let's look at the phases of the moon. So here, they kind of show you what each of the phases look like. So it says the moon seems to change shape. Each shape is a different moon phase. Which of these phases have you seen? So here you have the new moon, where you only see like just a little sliver of the moon. This is called, where you see a little bit more, it's called the waxing crescent moon. That's kind of interesting. I'll show you a little bit better. Here, where you see the whole thing, that's called the full moon, which you've probably heard of before. Here, this looks really similar to this one, except it's on the other side. And that one's called the waning crescent moon. And then down at the very bottom, we have what looks like the new moon, but it's on the other side. But it's actually called the new moon. It's still the same phase. It's just you see it on the other side. And let's read a little bit more. So it says, sometimes you see the moon in the daytime, sometimes at night. its shape seems to change. Wouldn't it be nice if we could visit and explore the sun and the moon? But they're so far away. Well, we can imagine that trip. Ready? All right, so let's see what they've got planned for us. Blast off, away we go. Up, 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 past rooftops, clouds, airplanes. Look, down, down, down. There's Earth, fat and round. Wispy clouds whirl above blue oceans. White ice and land, gold, green, and tan. Can you find the spot where you live? Maybe. Linger a while and watch. So that's what it would look like if you were in space. So we've already learned about the phases of the moon, and we've learned about what it would look like if you were up in space, what Earth would look like. See how Earth turns like a top? So here you can see that the Earth is tilted. That means like it's not going like this, it's tilted to the side. And you can see that the part of the Earth that's facing the sun, that's the daytime. And then the part of the Earth that's facing away from the sun is in nighttime. So let's see what it says over here. Different parts of Earth turn toward the sun and then turn away. The parts of Earth that are lit by the sun are in daytime. So just like we talked about right here. The parts of Earth that are in the shadow are in nighttime. So on that side. We could gaze forever, but we're on a mission. Onward. So there's another cool fact that you learned. One, that the Earth is tilted, that it doesn't go up and down, like straight up and down, it tilts to the side. And that while one half of the Earth is facing the sun during the daytime, the other half is facing away from the sun, and that means it's nighttime. So we've already learned lots of good facts. And if you need to, pause the video and you can jot those down and write them down or draw a quick picture. How far is the moon? You would have to line up 31 Earths side by side to fill the distance between Earth and the moon. Oh my goodness, you all. That's how far the moon is from us. You would have to take an entire Earth, which is huge. You would have to take 31 Earths and line them up side by side, and that's how far we are from the moon. That's crazy. Wow. Hundreds of thousands of miles from home, we arrive at the ball-shaped moon. It's smaller than Earth, but the same shape. A 3D sphere, round in all directions. So I see some bold print words too. I see 3D sphere is in bold print. That must be important. Let's zoom to the daytime side of the moon for a good look. Let's see what it looks like. See those dark patches? Some people imagined that they were oceans, but moon seas are rock. They formed long ago when giant pools of lava cooled and hardened. Think of gooey chocolate sauce freezing on ice cream. So there's some more really good information that you could jot down where all of these dark patches, that's where lava came up at one time, and then when it cooled, it hardened into a rock, and that's what created these, they call them moon seas. Let's see what it says over here. It says, bumpy mountains and splotchy craters cover higher ground. What made them? Have you ever dropped a pebble into a puddle? Plop, splatter. Water splashes out. Craters formed like splashes. Wow, very cool. So when you look at the moon and you see what looks like a big, almost like a hole, it's not really a hole, but I mean, it's like a big, I mean, it is kind of like a hole in the moon, but it's just where like a big rock dropped into the moon and it formed that in the moon's surface, which is really interesting. And they're called craters. Craters. Billions of years ago, billions, that's a very, very, very long time ago. Way back in time, huge and small space rocks crashed into the moon. Smash, shatter. chunks and smithereens of broken moon scattered. They left holes with high edges, quick craters, and instant mountains. So you can see one of the rocks hitting and creating that crater. Now, let's read about now. It says, the moon's craters, mountains, and seas have barely changed in billions of years. That's because the moon's not like Earth. There's not much to move moon dirt around. There's no flowing water, no air, wind, or weather. And then down here at the bottom in this little caption, it says, psst, some of these old, unchanging craters hide an ancient secret. Ooh, let's turn the page and read, what is that ancient secret? Ancient means like a really old secret. Let's see what it says. Ice. Cool. So it says scientists think this frozen water is mixed with moon dirt, like dirty snow. There's no skating here. Very cool. So the moon has what they call moon ice. Very, very cool. That's another good fact that you could write down. And here, I'm not going to read all of this, but it shows you how you can make your own moon ice, which is really cool. There's something else familiar on the moon. Stuff from Earth. There are robots sent recently by curious scientists. And there's older stuff too. About 50 years ago, astronauts visited the moon. They left some things behind. So they left on the moon when the astronauts went to the moon almost 50 years ago. They left moon buggies. So that's a moon buggy. They left footprints where they had walked on the moon. And they even left 2 golf balls. It says astronaut Alan Shepard had fun hitting them. Wow, so there's some more good facts about when, first of all, that astronauts went to the moon, but also what they left behind. People marveled at these lunar visits. Marveled means like they just were in awe. They couldn't believe that astronauts went to the moon. After all, for thousands of years, people looked up at the moon. Finally, someone looked back. So they're saying on the Earth, hello, moon. And he's on the moon saying, hello, Earth. And now, goodbye, moon. Here we come, sun. So over here it says, astronauts have been to the moon, but nobody has ever visited the sun. Can you guess why? Think about it. If you need to, pause the video and tell somebody that's sitting close to you or just think about it. But why do you think nobody has ever visited the sun? All right, so if you guessed because it is way too hot, I think you might be right. But let's read a little bit more about it. The sun is much farther from Earth. A 3-year trip instead of 3 days to the moon at your rocket speed. We're partway there. And look, now you can see that the sun is a sphere, like Earth and the moon. But this is about all that's similar. You'll see differences as you get closer. So it says stepping out in a safe, so this is kind of telling you, I'm not going to read all of that, but it's kind of showing you how you can figure out like where moon is and the Earth compared to the sun. So you can see how much farther, the moon was pretty far away, but you can see how much farther the sun is than the moon. So over here it says, for example, the sun is humongous. You could pack approximately 960,000 Earths inside of it. That's how big the sun is. Wow. Want to land? So it says sizing up. It says the sun is enormous compared to the moon. Why does it seem moon-sized from Earth? Hold a penny moon in one hand, a sun quarter in the other. Stretch out your arms. Wink and move the penny closer to your eye the way the moon is closer to Earth. See how its size almost matches the quarters? So that's like a little experiment you could do to kind of see why, even though the sun is so much bigger than the moon, you can kind of see why the moon and the sun seem like they're not that far away. But in reality, the sun is actually way further away than the moon is. So let's see what happens when you land. Well, actually, we may not be able to land because it says we can't. This blazing ball has no land to land on. That's because the sun is a star, like the stars you see at night, only much, much, much closer. That's why it looks so much bigger and a lot brighter than other stars, even from Earth. Like any star, the sun shines on its own. It is made of glowing, swirling gases similar to fire. Imagine countless campfires combined with flickering flames and flying sparks. Remember how the moon pretty much stays the same all the time? Well, the sun is so different. Just look at all the action. So there's all kinds of things happening on the sun, and it's made up of gases. And I see gases is in bold print, so that must be another important word. Sunspots, so another bold print word, skitter across the sun. Think of these dark dots as great big wild energy storms that last for weeks. How big? A single sunspot is about the size of the entire Earth. So one of these sunspots can be as big as the Earth. That's how big they are and how big the sun is. Here's a huge explosion, a solar flare. So there you go. There's another cool fact is that the sun has what's called solar flares, which is like a huge explosion on the sun. Every explosion sends bits of the sun zooming into space. Look at these giant long loops of sun material. So these things, their name is almost as long as they are. Ready? Solar prominences. That's a big word. So these are called solar prominences. There's also something you cannot see. It's the sun's terrific heat. Parts of the sun are millions of degrees hotter than a volcano or a rocket blast. So why doesn't Earth melt? Earth does not melt because the sun is so far away from it. That protects Earth from getting too hot. Luckily, though, the sun is not too far away. It's close enough to keep Earth warm and for plants to have enough sunlight to make food. The sun helps us live, and think about it. Even from 93 million miles away, Earth is connected to the sun. You don't really need an imaginary trip to explore the sun and the moon. Just keep looking up. But make sure if you do look up at the sun that you're wearing some sunglasses and don't look right into it. That could hurt your eyes. But oh my goodness, I see a glossary. So we saw all three of our text features that we talked about. We saw captions, we saw bold print, and now we see a glossary that tells us what those bold print important words mean. Very, very cool. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about what information did you learn about the sun and the moon, and then we're going to talk about what your writing is going to look like, okay? Let's do that next. All right, so now that you know a little bit more about the sun and the moon, you're going to actually write and tell your teacher some information that you learned about the sun and the moon. And don't forget that you can always go to BrainPop if you want to get some more information. The login information is on Seesaw on the activity, and you can always go and watch a couple of videos. There's one about the sun and one about the moon to give you some more information. But when you go to write, don't forget that we want you to try to write at least 5 sentences, okay? If you can't write that much, that's okay, but try to write at least 5 facts or 5 sentences about the sun or the moon, or both. And then don't forget to add that text feature in there too. So you can choose to do a caption, bold print, or a glossary to add a little bit more to your informational writing. We hope that you enjoyed learning about the sun and the moon, and I don't know about you, but I think it's pretty cool and pretty amazing what the sun and the moon are like. And we hope you enjoyed learning more about them, and we can't wait to read everything that you learned.